I thought it was quite interesting in the introduction to this section where they said the people working on this have a wealth of expertise and experience in the illegal wildlife trade, and I felt the wonderful academic sense of imposter syndrome in that I can purely claim to have experience in computer science, but I'm coming to the field of conservation and the illegal wildlife trade as a relative newcomer. So it's been a very interesting ride for me to learn a lot about this, but apply the things that we do know from computer science. So I want to talk a little bit about some of the questions that we have been asking, some of the approaches that we want to be taking, and ultimately a lot of the problems that we've been having, I suppose. So to introduce the work that we've been looking at in the online component of this project, we're interested in understanding where, how, and to what extent illegal wildlife products are moving to being sold online. So we know that there is a huge illegal wildlife trade globally, but to a large extent we're unaware of the scale of that trade, where it's happening, what's going on, what products are being sold. In reference to what the last speaker was saying, what products are not being sold online and why that may be. And beyond that, once we can start to get a feel for this kind of information, what methods can we use to understand patterns in the trade? How can we spot when an intervention is effective, when it's not being effective, and can we identify points where it would be useful for us to intervene in that trade? But rather than talking about sort of the context of the illegal wildlife trade in general, online trading, interestingly enough, there's been a lot of information recently about the drug trade online and things like this. The first online transaction that ever occurred happened in 1971, possibly 1972, when on the precursor to the internet, this thing called the ARPANET, a group of students at the Stanford Artificial Intelligence Laboratory arranged via this nascent computer network to buy an unspecified quantity of marijuana from a group of MIT students. And things have only gone uphill or downhill from then onwards. The first, what we might call legitimate online trade, was probably Pizza Hut in 1994. They were probably pipped to it slightly by a small seller who set up a marketplace who sold a copy of a Sting album in the previous week, but Pizza Hut still get first billing in most of the places that you find this. But from that initial trade, that first commercialized trade in 1994, the estimated online retail sales globally of all products are an estimated $1.86 trillion. Most of these, it must be said, there aren't hard numbers for this, but the vast majority of online retail sales remain in-country rather than crossing borders, and that's something that I think is significant. I can't tell you how well Pizza Hut are doing on their online trade anymore. I do know that about 50% of their sales are now online, for context, and I do know that in the 2015 Super Bowl, they made $12 million worth of sales in one day. So to give you an idea of how things are going for Pizza Hut at any rate. So when we consider online trading and where it's occurring, it's not a homogeneous phenomenon. We have a variety of trading platforms, and obviously you're all familiar with these. You're familiar with Amazon, I imagine, eBay, and various others. And I think what's particularly significant here is that whilst there are different platforms for the varieties of trade, there are different places to do it. They're not just equivalents that you choose to go to for one product or another. They have very different models for how the online trading is happening. Amazon sales are typically a business or Amazon itself selling a particular product to you. If you look at eBay, it's very much consumer to consumer, end users who trade through using the platform as the medium of communication. If you look at some of the Chinese marketplaces, Alibaba is largely a business-to-business seller, but Alibaba itself is the largest online retailer in the world. It's bigger than all of the others. Amazon, eBay, all these others combined do not make up the amount of trading that's going on Alibaba. They have Taobao as one of their subsidiaries, which is very equivalent to eBay. You've got Craigslist, which is a lot more rough and ready in how trades are communicated. It's a lot more just a way of bringing together people who want to trade items. Moving again to China, you've got WeChat, which is a social network in some senses similar to Twitter, for those of you who aren't familiar with it. But it also allows you to do a lot more. You can have group postings, you can arrange sales through it, there's a payment model that goes through it. So all of these different platforms have different affordances. They have different ways for people to get in touch, different ways for products to be made available, different ways for sales to be arranged and carried through. And they also have varying scopes for oversight. You know, there are different models on something like eBay. The platform is very strong in regulating the trade goes on there. There are relatively strong rules. There's strong enforcement from it. In other models, there's much lighter touch. And in other places, it's very hard even to see what trades are going on if you're not the person involved in the trade. And again, when you're dealing with trade that is not just local within a particular country, if you're interested in international trading, then you need to look at a whole new set of platforms and a whole new set of possibilities. So I'm fairly sure that there is illegal wildlife trading online. You know, we see it, and there are people here who've done studies that look into it and can identify it. But how do we discover it? You know, the internet is this wonderful place where everyone can find all the information they want and all the products that they want. But when you're looking for specific products and also specific illicit products, it can be a lot harder because people are often finding ways to hide what they're doing, or it's just not publicly available. Search engines are your first port of call. You know, type into Google, I want to buy some ivory, and see what comes up. Now, that's not useless. You know, that will give you some results. That will certainly lead you to some things. But search engines, your Googles, your Bings, your Baidus, often don't index the internals of these services. So you'll find public web pages, and you might find some eBay trades, but you won't find internal postings from WeChat. You won't find Twitter direct messages. You won't find things like this. So you get a very surface view of what's going on the web. And that's true not just for WeChat, it's true for private forums. This is sometimes what's referred to by researchers in this area as the deep web. The web that is perhaps password protected, or you need certain access to get into it. It's the stuff that isn't indexed by search engines, and that's where we want to look by and large. At the same time, if you do have an interest in a particular platform such as eBay, they maybe provide a search. Of course they provide a search. You want to find the products that are there. But they're rarely suitable for analysis. You can't do a broad-scale study of eBay in an automated sense, largely through just typing words into its search engine query. Some of them provide you with a programming interface, but that brings its own restrictions with it. And once you've moved beyond that, you know, once you've found how you're going to get reasonable coverage of what you're searching for, and you've chosen your platform, and you've found out how to search, you've got all the problems of language. You've got inconsistent indexing of products. You've got bias in the searches that you're using. They may be tailoring the search engine results for what it thinks you specifically want to see. And you've got to learn what the appropriate keywords are. What are buyers and sellers using to advertise and discover particular products when they're searching and selling online? And keywords is something that is a particular interest, I think, in our project, something that we're starting to look into quite significantly. There is a tension in the keywords for online products between discoverability. Consumers want to be able to find the product. Sellers want to be able to make their product available for sale. At the same time, particularly in the West, law enforcement are actively looking for keywords, and so you're trying to sort of keep ahead. You're trying to keep one step ahead. Keywords evolve as they attract attention. Now, lots of people are familiar with this in the room, I know, but when eBay originally did have listings for ivory that weren't being taken down too quickly, when eBay started to enforce an anti-ivory trading scenario, then ivory suddenly started to be listed as cowbone. When cowbone was picked up as the keyword that you were looking for, it was oxbone. And this shift in how keywords are used and how sellers get around it while still sort of nudge, wink, wink, this is the product you're looking for. This is something that's very difficult to track automatically, but is extremely useful if you want to do a systematic, ongoing, analytical search of these products online. I've mentioned localization already to some extent, but it's not just products only being sold within a country. It's as much the fact that many platforms themselves are region or country specific. So I've mentioned WeChat a couple of times already. It's almost unused outside of China. There are ways to get in on it. There are ways to get an account if you're not in China. There are ways for businesses in other areas to create a business account on WeChat. But by and large, it's a Chinese phenomenon. Similarly, there's the largest sort of European-based social network, VK. I'm not going to attempt the proper Russian pronunciation of that name. Is largely used within Eastern Europe and almost completely unused outside of it. And this is true for many platforms. So if trade is going to hop internationally, it can't do it on these region-specific platforms. It's either got to move to the international trade through places that do have global reach, your Facebooks, your eBays, and similar, or potentially it could be that the international consumer trade is not yet occurring online to a significant extent. And finding out what those platforms are and where that trade is going on is something we're looking at very actively. Similarly to platforms, the payment mechanisms that people use to pay for products is something that is a key point to try and analyze and study. Payments, when you're talking about online transactions, they can be out of band. They can be a Visa transaction, a bank transaction, a direct debit, something like this. I'm not sure there are many people doing illegal wildlife trading through direct debit, but it could happen. Or they can be linked to a platform. So PayPal and eBay are very strongly linked, and they're the same parent corporation. And so a lot of the transactions on eBay go on via PayPal. Or they can be fully integrated. Places like WeChat have WePay built into the model. It's part of the service. It's part of what you use. So PayPal, WePay. There's Alipay, which is a similar product offered by Alibaba. And then for other regions, there are region-specific payment models like Doku, which is Indonesian, which is typically aimed because there's a large number of people that don't use banking or online banking or electronic transfers. So this allows you to load up effectively a prepaid card that you can use. So understanding these payment models and how you can work with the companies that are offering them to investigate this is very important. There's also Bitcoin. I'm sure most people are familiar with Bitcoin, but this sort of largely anonymous electronic cryptocurrency that has seen a lot of attention in the criminal marketplaces recently. That's there as well. When you're dealing online and you don't have a physical presence, you're not going up to somebody in the street and sort of shaking their hand firmly and working out if you can trust this person, trust is extremely important. Okay, you need to ensure that the products that you're buying are genuine. You need to know that sellers will actually deliver when you send them a payment. You need to know that that parcel is actually going to arrive. When you're a seller, you need to know that when you dispatch your product, then the payment is going to arrive, or it's not going to be withdrawn a day later and you're going to lose the money. The way that most platforms handle this, or many platforms handle this, is an eBay-style system or an Amazon-style system. You know, you have a seller rating. When somebody engages in a transaction with you, they leave feedback. That's something that can be very important for building trust in these marketplaces. But many systems out there don't have formal feedback or reputation mechanisms. There are plenty of platforms out there where trading is going on, and the only reputation you have is either looking at the number of trades that the person has or just how they present themselves. Does this person look fairly professional? Do they meet the social expectations I have of whether I can trust somebody or not? Another feature that I've discussed with some people is that sometimes you'll have a transaction that is arranged on one platform to allow the more illicit, underground kind of transaction to be initiated, and then you'll buy a fake product on a more trustworthy platform so that you get the feedback mechanism. So you start off saying, I want to buy a certain amount of product X on WeChat or via a forum, and then you'll go and buy 100 sheets of paper on eBay, but then the transaction will actually be for the illegal wildlife trade project you just bought, and that's something that certainly does happen. So, darknet markets. Now, I should sort of put a caveat at the beginning of this. The first thing to say about darknet markets is that they're incredibly exciting, but there's not a huge amount of evidence of large volumes of illegal wildlife trading on them. So, darknet markets are underground encrypted marketplaces that use anonymous internet connections to allow people to buy and sell things like drugs. Okay, the most famous one of these was the Silk Road, which was taken down a couple of years ago, which was doing a huge amount of trade in drugs. There's also a variety of other marketplaces out there in the dark net. You can buy and sell counterfeit goods, you can buy and sell firearms. One of the most popular products out there is Tesco vouchers, because for some reason they're a good balance between easy to trade, small amounts of money that you can get back, but there's a roaring trade in Tesco vouchers on the dark net. You need specific software to access this. It's very easy to use these days. You just download a particular browser and access these marketplaces. But despite the fact that there's a small volume, there are explicit illegal wildlife products being sold there. And I'll show you a couple of examples in a minute. But one of the counterintuitive things about the darknet is that everything is openly and explicitly listed there. So if you're looking for illicit products on eBay, you need to jump through some hoops. You need to find the right keywords, you need to find the right people and work out how to transact without getting caught. On the darknet, you're protected by this very complex cryptographic set of protections that give you security and anonymity and untraceability. So people list rhino horn, people list marijuana, people list crystal meth, all of these things that you want to buy, they're there and they're openly tradable. And so ironically, darknet markets are easier to track, to analyze, to get statistical overviews of what's going on there, because people aren't trying to hide what they're doing. They trust the platform. So just to give you a few examples here of actual trades, this will be quite small on screen, but this was black rhino horn, 100% real black rhino horn. These things sell for 200 to 300,000. I came across these two and I'm looking to get rid of them quickly. I'm going to try and sell them whole, but if I can't, I will sell them by the pound for $20,000 per pound. This was occurring openly, and the transactions are going through this anonymous, untraceable currency called Bitcoin. A similar ivory elephant tusk that I found, this was from a marketplace called Alphabay, which has since been shut down. But again, real ivory elephant tusk, hand-carved, and they're asking for a purchase price of $2,000. So these things are occurring there, but not necessarily in huge volumes. However, one of the things that we can do when we look at these marketplaces, we've been studying them sort of more generally, is to look at where the trade is taking place. So this is not for illegal wildlife products, this is for all products that are being traded on these marketplaces. And what we can see is where sellers list as the destination that they're willing to ship their products. So we scraped a large number of darknet marketplaces and found where people would sell their products. And what you can see there is that the United States is a hub. I'm proud to say that the United Kingdom is one of the world leaders in sales of drugs on the internet. Australia is also quite common, but there's a much smaller amount of trade in the rest of the world. And when we look at where the trade flows, when we look at the source and the destination of products that are available for sale, what we can see from these trade flow Sankey diagrams is that by and large, a lot of the trade stays within the continent that it originates. So Europe ships to Europe, the Americas ship to the Americas, Asia ships to Asia. There is cross-flow, but it's much less significant than the intercontinental flow. So if I were to break down Europe, for example, and just show you all the sort of countries that go in from, there's a lot of trade within Europe. There's a lot of cross-border trade within Europe. Again, United Kingdom leading the way. But we can see that it's a lot more significant than the intercontinental trade. So, just to sort of start to wrap this up, the things that we're interested in looking at now, or the questions we're asking, which platforms are key to online trading globally for the illegal wildlife trade? And what we're working on at the moment is a sort of survey of major platforms for major trading countries to work out what's going on where. We're interested in assessing the volume of the trade, either based on direct observation or on comparisons with similar products by looking at similar things being traded in other places. And we're interested in how we can maximize the coverage so we get some sort of representative sample. And as I've been saying throughout this talk, to what extent is the online trade international, or to what extent is it country specific? And if it is going international, what platforms are enabling that? So moving forward for us, identifying major platforms is key. If we can cooperate with the providers, we very much want to do that. It can be tricky. If they provide us with programming interfaces, API access, then we can do it. If not, then there are ways to scrape it, to just look at it like a consumer would, but automatically and gather that data. We're interested in drawing parallels between illegal wildlife trade and other trades, such as the drug trade, both online and offline. But fundamentally for us, a lack of data is the problem that we're running into. And as I said, the ironic thing here is that if the traders are going to the Darknet and using Bitcoin, that's wonderful for me because I can see everything that's going on. If they're using eBay and PayPal, I have absolutely no access whatsoever, and so I can't see what's going on. So when you consider, when somebody mentions the Darknet to you, it's probably worth remembering that the Darknet is considerably brighter than the normal web. So, and that's me finished. Thank you.